Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, stay with us for my special interview with Senator Pat Toomey, and then our popular financial literacy update, Pennsylvania politics and government in depth and in detail. And guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, before we get started, let me say that after this weekend, we're going on a 3-week hiatus. The first time in 16 years, we'll be off for 3 weeks. The Olympics. Watch TV and support the U.S. team in the Olympics. It'll be a lot of fun, a lot of excitement. And then we'll be back. But joining me as you've been on this program before, Senator. That's right, Senator Pat Toomey. I hate the junior senator stuff. You're one of our senators. That's all. At least you're not Joe Biden, who kept saying he was our third senator.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure we only have two.
You only have two. Good. Well, look, let me start with a couple of things. You're known as the guy with the details, with the budget, and with the deficits. But last week, well, by the time this airs, 2 weeks ago, you pushed through a jobs bill that was pretty important for the middle class. It has to do with a variety of incentives for small business, dealing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. In simple language, talk with us about that.
It's all about jobs. It's all about helping to move the economy. And specifically, Terry, what we saw were a whole range of ways in which the federal government makes it really unaffordable for growing small and medium-sized companies to raise the capital they need to continue their growth. The president, to his credit, appointed a bipartisan commission of business folks and asked them, take a look at all the ways that we regulate and restrict and control the way companies raise money and come back with recommendations of how we can facilitate that. Well, they came out with a series of ideas. We evaluated those ideas, and because I spent most of my adult life in the business world, including in financial services, some of those things really leapt off the page at me as ways that we could help a company go public, a company that was ready to do that, ways that we could help a private company stay private but raise more capital so they can grow. So I took several of those ideas, and the first thing we did was we said, who's a prominent Democrat who we can work with on each of these discrete ideas so that we can get this done?
And who were some of them?
I'll tell you who some of them were. The main guy I went to for the biggest, most important piece of this was Chuck Schumer. Now, Chuck Schumer and I don't agree on much.
I can understand that, Senator.
But we agreed on this, and we put together a mechanism by which medium-sized and small companies can go public without having to comply with the most expensive and onerous regulations. Tom Carper from Delaware, great job helping us develop the legislation and push it through that allows private companies to raise capital.
You have the reputation of being, a very thoughtful, low-key guy. You're not very demonstrative. I never hear you saying stupid things like some politicians do. How is this working? I mean, we hear about this extreme partisanship, the bitterness, the rancor. Is that as difficult a problem as most people think it is right now?
It's a serious problem. But there are, more than every once in a great while, we actually do come together and do something constructive, like this Jobs Act. The President's Commission made some recommendations. We introduced bipartisan legislation. It passes the House, comes over to the Senate. We went through the normal process, and we got it done. And as a result, today, growing companies will find it easier to raise the capital they need to grow more and to hire more workers. But I will be honest, Terry, that's more the exception than the rule. I'm frustrated. We're not addressing the things we ought to be addressing, especially on the budget side. So it's very frustrating.
Let's run to a quick break because I want to get into this the budget. You've been taking the lead here. We've got, depending on whose figures you want to look at, a $1.3 or $1.5 trillion deficit this year, something pushing a $16 trillion deficit, and something that Congress just simply won't do anything about is 75 million people in 2007 began to do something, turned 65. 65 to $70 trillion. This is what you read from the Congressional Budget Office for Medicare and Medicaid or Social Security. When we come back, I wanted to get into, get your thoughts about what we have to do, because I know you've been heavily involved in that. We'll be back with Senator Pat Toomey following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Senator Pat Toomey. We're talking about, of all things, budgets and deficits. Senator, it seems like it's an intractable problem. You put a budget together. Can we get a balanced budget?
Yeah, we can, Terry. It's not that hard to do, but we have lacked the political will. But, I think that these massive deficits that we're running are part of the reason the economy is underperforming. Yeah. It's the threat of the huge tax increases, the inflation, if this gets monetized, if the Fed prints money to pay for all this, that threat is having a chilling effect on business investment and growth. So, plus the fact that we can see, looking across the Atlantic, how this ends. Yeah. If you keep living beyond your means, and we're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. As you point out, we're running trillion-dollar deficits year after year. And in the last 4 years, we've added almost as much debt as every previous year in the history of the Republic. This is crazy.
And it seems like everybody has some program that they absolutely must have. So there's almost no program you can go and cut between the special interests that protect them. And go ahead.
But this is what we get sent to Congress to do, to make the tough decisions. I'll give you an example. The budget that I introduced reaches a balance within 8 years. Okay? Doesn't do it overnight, but it does it within a reasonable time frame. Here's what we did. We cut spending in the first year by 3%. That's all. And then over the next 9 years of the 10-year budget window for which we planned, the average growth in spending is about 3% a year.
Right.
That's all you need to do. You need to hold the growth of the federal government spending to less than the economy's growing, and we'll reach a point where we get into balance. Look, it's not that it's easy, but it's not impossible by any means. We could do this.
But now you tried last year, and you just tried just recently again?
I introduced a budget. I wrote my own budget in 2011 and again in 2012. Both years I got more votes on the Senate floor than any other budget, but I didn't get a majority.
Well, the Senate hasn't adopted a budget for what? We into the third year? We're going into the third year?
No, we've gone through 3 years.
3 years.
So Harry Reid, the Democrat majority leader of the United States Senate, controls the Senate, and he is of the opinion that there's no need to do a budget. And so Republicans like me, I'm a little apoplectic about that. The idea that a $3.7 trillion federal government doesn't even have a budget to provide the guardrails over what we're going to spend and how.
I can say that. You can't. Sounds insane. You don't have to use that word,
So I've introduced my own, and I've had very broad support, almost unanimous support among Republicans, and I've had privately a number of Democrats say, this makes a lot of sense. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to get it done.
So now, how about this question? As you know, we're in a pretty brutal presidential election that's turned ugly even earlier than most presidential elections. Are you optimistic at all that after we get out of this sort of we're in partisan time all the time, but through the election that there's a window maybe to get something done?
Well, there absolutely is if we win. That's what it comes down to. If Governor Romney wins this election, which I think he's likely to, then we'll almost certainly take control of the Senate. And look at it this way. The American public will have then gone through 2 consecutive election cycles, 2010 and 2012, in which they've really repudiated this administration's agenda. And if it culminates in dismissing the president and hiring a new president, then I think the collective message to the political class is going to be time to change course. Let's get our budget under control. Let's have a pro-investment regulatory philosophy. Let's have simplicity and fairness on the tax code and lower marginal rates. We can get rid of some of the loopholes and write-offs.
Let's just segue just for a minute. Look, these entitlements, everybody understands they have to be reformed. Either we have to pay more or reduce some benefits. You can't, and maybe providers get less. They're already arguing, hospitals and doctors, that they're already being cut. And we're not talking about a little bit of money here. We're not even talking about $16 trillion. We're talking about 65 or 70.
Yeah, the design of the big entitlement programs, especially Medicare and Medicaid, is not sustainable. No program can grow faster than the economy indefinitely because, by definition, it's just math. It will consume everything. But here's the point. First of all, we don't have to change the rules of the game for anyone who's already retired. We could have the changes go into effect 10 years from now. There's one exception to that. I've advocated in Medicare, the program by which we provide health care for elderly people over 65. I think it's crazy that we don't ask wealthy retirees to pay a little more for this.
Yeah.
Why in the so that's something I would do.
It makes sense.
I would do that immediately. Yeah. But the structural changes need to change incentives so that people have more ownership, have more rational utilization. Yeah. Medicaid, frankly, we should let governors and state legislatures make more decisions. So we could block grant Medicaid to the states, free them up to be more flexible about delivering health care to poor people. We could make some changes in Medicare so individuals would have more say in the kind of policy they got and would have more incentive to control costs. We could do these things. The bipartisan plans are on the table that I've supported. Unfortunately, we're in this gridlock.
All right, we're going to run we're talking about paying. You know, we have commercials. Yeah. We have to pay. We have to pay the bills. When we come back, I want to ask you about the Affordable Care Act, and you know, a bunch of states, governors, I think 6 or 7, have flatly said they're not going to participate. Governor Corbett has not indicated what he's likely to do. I want to ask you a couple questions about Affordable Care Act, and then before we leave today, maybe. You know that you weren't going to get out of here without having asked you about the vice presidency. Okay. I know what you're going to say, but we're going to ask you anyway. We'll be back with Senator Toomey in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Senator Toomey. Senator, the Affordable Care Act, we won't get into the constitutionality of it. That decision was made. We'll see what its impact is. But some states, for example, are not participating in the Medicaid part. And if we understand the Supreme Court decision, the feds can't take their money away, the rest of their money away. Right. Have you given any thought about the Medicaid program? Do I have to ask you that? I know you have. Yeah. The block grants, you were talking about more flexibility. What do you think ought to happen?
See, the problem is we tie the state's hands, and we tie them with very strict rules about how Medicaid can be administered. As you know, the cost of Medicaid is rising faster than any other big government program. It's rising much faster than the economy, and it's devastating state budgets. Mm-hmm. You want to know why so many states are cutting back their funding for education? It's because Medicaid costs are squeezing out everything else. Yeah. And so a lot of governors have come to us and said, hey, could you let us figure this out? There are better ways to run Medicaid, to serve health care needs of poor people than the way you force us to do it.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, the Obamacare legislation moves in the opposite direction. It says to the states, now you have to expand this program that's already unaffordable, and say, well, we'll pick up the tab for the first year, and then we'll pick up most of the tab the next year, and then we're silent about what happens after that. And I think
about 16 million people would be added to the Medicaid rolls, as I understand it.
Well, yeah, and it's already unaffordable. So do we really want to make this a general working class entitlement, which used to be something just for the poorest people in our society, and do we want to force that on the states? Yeah. I think we want to give states more flexibility.
One of the things I hear from hospitals, and we have regular experts from our hospitals who come on, is that they've got to treat many of these patients anyway, and they don't get reimbursed for it. So, and they have to pick up the cost because legally they're required to do it. Hospital's not going to turn somebody down anyway, as you know.
Right.
So, I mean, is there a way out of that problem?
Well, it's tough. I mean, I think people ought to be made to pay for what they consume if they can afford it.
Sure.
And so Medicaid should be there for the people who are, really truly need it and have no alternative. But we've had so many policies that make health care more expensive than it needs to be, make health insurance. Look, we've got 44 mandates in Pennsylvania of things that an insurance company has to do. Yeah. So that means your policy is more expensive than it has to be.
All right, before you get out of here, and I know you knew I was going to ask you this question about the vice presidency. I mean, lately, your name has appeared. I mean, you're a new member, but you were in Congress for 3 terms. It's not like you don't know what's going on in Washington. But What do you think? You're waiting for the phone. You're not waiting for the phone.
I'm not waiting by the phone. Look,
ahead.
first of all, I love my job. This is a great challenge, but a tremendous honor and opportunity to represent the people of Pennsylvania in the United States Senate. I intend to stay right here and keep doing this work. I do think, I'm convinced, that Governor Romney is a very thoughtful, very methodical, very analytical kind of guy, and he's going to make a very careful decision. And there's a deep bench, Terry.
Right.
There's lots of very well-qualified governors and senators and people outside of elective office who could do a great job. I'm sure he'll make a good choice.
Yeah. Well, as you know, it's going to be a very close campaign. I noticed, all the polls show it's about a 2-point lead for the president nationally, has a bigger lead in our state. And I noticed you've been getting a little more active. You were at an opening. You're going to go out and you've been campaigning for Romney?
Yes, actively, and I will continue. I just think so much depends on this. Terry, I think President Obama's a likable guy, no question about that. But his policies have been really bad for this country. And Governor Romney knows what it takes to get an economy moving, to get jobs created. And we really don't have any time to lose. We've got to turn this around, and he can do it.
Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on. You're welcome to come on anytime. One of the things that I've been delighted about, and I think I say this as an independent, is the way that you and Senator Casey, you don't always vote together, but you get along, you cooperate with each other. I think that's only good for our state.
Well, thanks. You can disagree without being disagreeable.
Absolutely. All right, our popular financial literacy update is next after we turn the corner and pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, it's History of Credit Union Youth Ambassador contest. They pick a youth ambassador. We're going to talk to the youth ambassador. In fact, she's sitting across from me now. Her name is April Singleton, and joining me, as often is the case, is Jim McCormack. He's the president of the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Welcome, both of you. Now, this is a contest, April, which you have to go get involved with. You have to take an essay. You have to do some things in order. What compelled you to do this?
It was the challenge of trying something new. I wanted to meet other people who are enthusiastic about the credit union movement and just really bring back some ways to my credit union of what is interesting, what's interesting people, young people now.
Sure.
And this is definitely a challenge, and it was a good opportunity.
Well, I'm going to ask you in a moment about what you intend to do during your year. Why does the credit union do this?
The association has done this for 36 years, Terry. Credit Union Youth Ambassador, and it's a way to get younger people involved and also use the younger people as missionaries out there for financial literacy and for credit unions. But 36 years has been going on.
Yeah, wow. April, maybe I should ask Jim this, but either one of you, does each year's youth ambassador decide what project they want to work on, Jim? Or do you sort of set the parameters of it?
We've set the parameters, and much of it has to do with financial literacy because our contest is based upon the co-op nature of credit unions and financial literacy.
So what is it that you intend to do this year?
Really promote just how credit unions working together, just cooperating with each other, whether it be through shared branching or one of our many other means, how that's really going to get the younger generation. Everything's basically moving more electronic, and we really need to reach that age group before they start making their major life decisions, and we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Now, we've talked about this on numerous occasions, the fact that getting young people involved in the financial literacy. We've talked about credit card use, and particularly with college students, young people, getting to understand savings and check. Is this part of that whole focus that the credit union, that your association has been working on?
It's part of the whole focus, but actually this contest came even before financial literacy was possible.
Wow.
So what did started you do? In the mid-'70s.
And what did you have them do then? What did they do then?
Those in the 70s, we used to go out into classrooms. Now we have credit unions that themselves,
Right.
43 classrooms throughout Pennsylvania. But the contestants used to go out and go into classrooms and learn about what the needs are for the younger generation, any younger generation in the 60s, 70s, or whatever.
Did you have a credit union class, so to speak, at your school?
I did not. I've just known our credit union ever since I was young. My whole family's been a part of it. We didn't have that at my school. We didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, I guess as Jim points out, they've been expanding this. We've talked about this as in school today, in regular classrooms. Is there a class that you have had that deals with this kind of aspect of financial literacy, credit cards, banking, debt, credit? I mean, it's complicated stuff.
There was nothing. We were just kind of thrown out there. You graduated and you were expected to know it or have your family teach it to you, but unfortunately not everyone knows where to start.
Now, when you go out, are you going to actually talk about aspects of financial literacy? Do you hope that what you do is to get, are you actually going to talk about it, or are you going to try to coordinate efforts to get folks to talk about it and to study it?
It's a mixture. Coordinate things with my credit union to get out there to really promote it, but also just to make it more vocal that we are here. We are the pillar of the community, so to speak. Right. We're here for you to teach you before you can make these decisions. Come trust us. And that's really what I'm going to go out there and say.
We think that April's going to do a very, very good job of inspiring other credit unions out there. Her credit union's in Chester County, Citadel, and they do a great job at this. But inspiring other credit unions to get more involved with financial literacy.
Yeah. Well, you would think, given the fact that young people are the next generation of customers, right? I mean, there's a bunch of reasons to do it. First of all, as we've talked about over the years, it's important for folks to learn about this, to protect themselves, right? To know what kind of, how to make investments, how to do credit. But it's also a good business decision, too. I mean, because it's the next generation of folks that...
It's good business for the credit union, for the financial services industry, and just for the consumers. They are consumers right now.
Yeah. Now, this is a year-long... are you in school or out of school now?
I'm in college right now.
Where do you go to school?
American Intercontinental University. It's an online school.
Okay. So is there any aspect of this that you can use at school?
Absolutely. We write papers every week, and it just tying in my experiences with what I'm learning. It's a business management degree, so it's going to tie directly into that.
That makes sense. And particularly with your generation, I mean, I think it's hugely important. At any rate, I want to thank both of you for coming in, and good luck in your year. Maybe at the end of the year you'll come in and tell us what you did and how you did it. Thanks for watching this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well. Remember, 3 weeks. We won't be back until April 18th, 19th.